Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Andrew DiCecco from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com is here. We did our NFL Friday 5 today because we're off tomorrow. I gave you my 5 favorite games for Week 9 of the NFL. That number 1 game is Kansas City Buffalo. It's the Eagles bye week. We'll do Week 10 next week, Week 10. That means we're getting very close to the start of the NFL season. Our Friday 5, of course, football at 4 is here. Andrew DiCecco will start our division previews next week, where we take a look at all 4 teams from one division every Thursday on the show. But right now, Andrew DiCecco is here, and he is doing his positional previews over at InsideTheBirds.com. So we got a lot of questions based on those today for Andrew DiCecco, who joins us right now for Football at 4 on the Sports Bash. What's up, Andrew?
Hey, Mike, how you doing, man?
All is good. Happy 4th, man. I know it's we're all anxious to get to the weekend. We got a long line of cars driving down here right now who are all listening to hear what's going on with this Eagles linebacker position. Let's get into that a little bit. Your article over at InsideTheBirds.com talked a lot about the battle at linebacker, which is interesting because Pro Football Focus, Andrew, said it's one of the strongest positions in football, but that's based on the fact that they have Bond and Dean ranked off of last year. But does the Eagles' depth, if Dean is not ready to go, concern you enough? Is there enough versatility and youth to get by without him? Do you like what's left over without him? And then questions about Campbell.
It isn't ideal, Mike, but I think when you have someone like Zach Bond, who's already established himself as a premier player at the position, you have someone with intriguing ability in Jiad Campbell, who Vic Fangio said will be on the practice field, quote unquote, sometime in August. I think you have to feel pretty good about that. That's also adding in the fact that Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is a player the Eagles are high on. He's done a remarkable job behind the scenes preparing himself. Very smart player, instinctual, and I'm curious to see how he responds in his second season. He's going to certainly have a lot of opportunities. Those first-team reps in camp are certainly going to be beneficial to his development. And then Smile Mondon, the rookie linebacker from Georgia, a lot of experience. I think Nakobe Dean, having that relationship with him, is going to be instrumental in helping him, sort of acclimate and learn the defense, and that might expedite his process. I think he's more so going to be a special teams contributor. So right then and there, I think you feel pretty good about it. It's not ideal, but you also have that knowledge of eventually Nakobe Dean's going to be returning.
More on those guys coming up. Zach Bond, big deal. Andrew, he obviously got rewarded for his season last year. How important is he in this Vic Fangio defense?
Oh, I mean, he's critical to the overall functionality of the defense. He'll be wearing the green dot, but his ability to be that centerpiece there, operating at that second level, seeing things, his ability to read and diagnose, he can get downhill, he can cover, get his hands on the football. I just think that he's such a well-rounded player, and one of the best stories last season to come out of the NFL, but he's just scratching the surface. That's what's crazy about that. Do I think he can exceed his production from last season? Well, that might not be realistic, but I certainly think he can equal it, and he's so new at the position that he's learning almost on the job, as crazy as that sounds, and he also has that continuity with Fangio and linebackers coach Bobby King. So I think that you can clearly see the impact that he has, but I think he's going to continue to get better, and he will be able to do enough, at least in my opinion, to sort of atone for the loss of Nakobe Dean in the interim.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. His article's up over at InsideTheBirds.com. He's doing his positional previews. We're looking at the linebacker spot, and there's a lot of questions based on the linebackers that they have here. Jiad Campbell drafted. A lot of people keep asking, can he make an immediate impact despite that shoulder injury? Do you look at him coming right in and making an immediate impact right away?
Well, I should also say that it's a challenging position to master under this Fangio defense. For safeties and linebackers, there's a lot of responsibilities that are placed on their shoulders. Now, he's getting mental reps now. We saw some of that in OTAs for the media-attended sessions. I think that he can, because he can also help you potentially as an edge rusher, which I assume will be in his bag of tricks. But yeah, I mean, he's so athletic, and my understanding is, just from watching him play, that, he has some inherent athletic traits that I think are going to translate favorably as a rookie. So that would suggest to me that he can step in and help. But there isn't this pressure because the Eagles do like what they've seen from Trotter Jr. So whether or not we see Campbell take on the lion's share of the snaps in the early going, maybe he has to, ease his way back in. But I think that they feel pretty good about Trotter as well. So I think they have enough there at the top, those top three, to sort of navigate the waters until you get Nakobe Dean back, who really is the heartbeat of that defense.
All right. Well, one guy, we haven't talked a lot about recently is Oren Burks. And how big do you look at the loss of Oren Burks? What steps do they kind of take to replace what he brought them? People forget he started the Super Bowl for them.
Yeah, there were 3 losses that the Eagles had in free agency that I don't think get enough discussed. They don't get discussed enough. Oren Burks, Isaiah Rodgers, and Fred Johnson. Those are players that they're a little bit further down in the pecking order in terms of priority when you look at some of who they lost, Josh Sweat and Milton Williams. But they all filled pivotal roles, and we're looking at Oren Burks right now. I mean, he had one of the most underrated postseasons that I can remember from of all the players on that team, I would say, because for him to step in and almost make it so that the defense doesn't really miss a beat. I mean, that speaks volumes to not only Oren Burks, but also linebackers coach Bobby King, because he was able to work with him on refining some things and putting him in position to be successful. He's a veteran player, of course, but let's not forget what that conversation was like leading up to the divisional round when Nakobe Dean got hurt and you weren't sure whether or not you were going to see a platoon of Burks and Trotter Jr. Fangio gave Trotter Jr. a ringing endorsement. But Burks was good enough that they didn't need to go to Trotter Jr., and I don't think that was talked about enough. He was able to kind of hold that down, and I don't think that that's going to be something that should be discounted because he did a lot for the Eagles in the postseason and really made strides down the stretch.
Well, and it's funny you bring up Trotter. He was a special team standout, but can he make that leap if needed to every down linebacker with all the injuries?
I think that he can, and the reason why, sort of supporting my opinion here is that he's playing alongside someone like Zach Bond, and they've had reps together last season, and they're going to have a ton more reps together in training camp, so the communication is going to be where it needs to be. And Trotter Jr., I always say this, what he lacks in prototypical size and athleticism, he makes up for with football intellect, instincts, and the ability to read and diagnose. Those are certain traits that you just either you have it or you don't. You can't, in my opinion, get better at that. He has those in him, and I think that should help him transition from being a special teams player to all of a sudden having to flip that switch and play a more prominent role defensively.
While we're on that, kind of level of player, Smile Mondon, you just mentioned him, seems like, hey, special teams guy, but is he a guy that could sneak into Fangio's rotation if, let's say there's a couple injuries? Could he battle with Trotter and maybe beat Trotter out?
Could he? I suppose, but until we see him with pads on in training camp, it's impossible for me to say. And it really wouldn't be responsible for me to say, yeah, definitely. Did I like what I've seen from him in college tape? Yeah, I viewed him as one of the best day 3 selections, period. I just thought he offers a lot of ability, and I think that he has another level that he can tap into. But he's afforded the luxury of developing and not having to be thrown into the deep end and trying to figure it out too early. We've seen that with Eagles linebackers in the past. I think he's best suited right now as a special teams maven. I don't know that he's there yet to be able to really challenge Trotter for any meaningful playing time. But again, training camp has a way of sorting everything out, and we learn a little bit more about these players. But all I can tell you right now, Mike, is that I really like what I saw from him in college, and there's something to be said for experience at that level of college football. So he'll be one that I will have my eyes on in camp.
All right, so if Dean and Campbell are both out, who are your top 3 guys that would be in the mix to replace them?
Bond, Trotter Jr., and, I mean, we're looking at who's on the roster right now. It would have to be Mondon Jr., but I would have to imagine that just given the numbers shortage that they have there, they could probably stand to add another linebacker, really just to be able to run the basic drills and have, first, second, third, and even fourth team linebackers. But right now, as we see it, those would be the 3. Vaughn, Trotter Jr., and Mondin Jr.
Okay, all right. So from linebackers, Andrew also did a preview of the edge rushers. We'll take a look at some edge rusher stuff. Check out the full article on the linebackers over at InsideTheBirds.com. And now, I read the article on the edge rushers. There's a lot here because I was pretty intrigued by the two signings here. But let's start. Nolan Smith's name comes up, as a guy, maybe TJ Watt. I don't think that's going to happen. But I guess the question would be, if that was a legitimate possibility, is Smith a guy you're willing to part with for that level of player, or is he ready to become the Eagles' own Pro Bowl pass rusher?
Well, normally I don't like talking about fake trades or anything like that, hypotheticals or anything like that. But for the sake of this conversation, I would say no, because I view Nolan Smith as a player who has double-digit sack ability. He's young. He has a personality that really fits the culture here in Philadelphia, and I think he's a budding leader and a budding star in the NFL. Now, he has to go out there and put it together. I understand that, but when you look at the leap that he's made from year one to year two, the arrow is trending up, and I think everything the Eagles have done this offseason has been to really build around its young nucleus of talent. So I think you have to see that through, and that's why it would always make sense to stick with Nolan and that young core of players.
Okay, so Nolan Smith, a lot of people excited about what he can be. We'll obviously be keeping a lot of eye on him at training camp. Two other guys. Which free agent do you think has a bigger impact, Ojulari, Uche?
I'm going to say Azeez Ojulari, just because we've seen more consistency from him in his career. Now, injuries are a factor, but he has 22 career sacks. He's 25 years old. He's a situational player, but there was a season, I believe, when he was a rookie, when he played in 16 games, he played over 700 snaps. So you've seen it before. Whereas someone like Josh Uche, his best season came in 2022. He had 11.5 sacks. He also played a career high in snaps. That was 38% of the Patriots' snaps. But that's really what he is. He's a situational player, and so is Ojulari, to be fair. But I think Uche is probably better suited to kind of sprinkle in and have a handful of snaps where he can really be purely a pass rusher, because he doesn't give you a lot in terms of run defense. But if he's your fourth edge rusher, I think you can make that work.
Okay, so Uche had 11.5 sacks in 2022. Can Vic Fangio unlock that version of him, or is he no longer that level of player?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because he had 11.5 sacks that year, and then the 2 years combined after that, it was just 5 sacks. Now, you can look a little bit deeper into it and maybe suggest that, okay, maybe he wasn't a scheme fit for the Chiefs, or he fell out of favor in New England, whatever. But what I've seen from him on tape is a player who's wildly inconsistent, and that's why you see the contract sort of reflect that. Now, there's something to be said for being placed into a new defense with a winning culture and a defensive coordinator who is going to optimize what you do well. But what we've also learned from Vic Fangio is that if you can't fit or if you can't play, you're going to find that out pretty quickly, because we learned that early on with Bryce Huff when you weren't seeing the impact in training camp, and that translated into, you saw the usage, the reduction of usage in the regular season. So we'll find out. We have to learn if he's even a fit for this defense and how they plan to utilize him. But I think that there is a path to him sort of unlocking the potential that you saw back in 2022. He's not going to play enough, in all likelihood, barring something unforeseen, to be able to put up that kind of production. But I think you feel pretty good about him joining forces with Vic Fangio and outside linebackers, defensive ends coach Jeremiah Washburn, who's done a tremendous job with development.
Well, then back to, Ojulari and Uche was the original question. Uche had 11.5 sacks. If Ojulari can stay healthy enough, what type of impact could he have? Or is he a guy that will be more situational, and that's just Jalix Hunt's spot?
I think he would be more so situational. Now, could he have a smattering of sacks, like 4 or 5? Sure. We have to learn about the player and how he fits into the defensive equation. But I really do think, you mentioned Jalix Hunt, Mike. I think that's a player that the Eagles are really high on. And for a younger player like that, I think you want to give him all of those opportunities to really grow and work through some of those challenges and growing pains, because he is part of the future. And I think you don't want to shortchange him in any degree, in any regard, by working in a player who's signed to a one-year deal, probably isn't part of your long-term plans. I think he's going to have a role, Azeez Ojulari, that is, but I just don't know how significant it's going to be. But they're going to probably have to, just looking at the edge rusher group, he has to be able to give you something because beyond the top three, there's questions.
Yeah. Well, let's get into questions about one of those guys. Antoine Powell-Ryland, big college numbers. Is he a guy that can sneak into this rotation, or is this kind of a development year? Last year we didn't think Hunt would have any impact, but is Antoine Powell-Ryland, who did have very good college success and good college numbers, does he factor in this for you over the two guys we've been talking about, Ojulari and Uche?
I don't think that he's going to be able to leapfrog. Definitely, I don't think he's going to leapfrog both. He may leapfrog maybe Josh Uche, but that is a tall order to ask for a day 3 pick. Now, does he have upside? Sure he does. But there are shortcomings to his game. He doesn't have the length that you typically look for. I love his motor. I love his pass rush prowess, but he does leave something to be desired when it comes to playing the run. And those are things that a rookie and any young player really has to really learn. And the only way you learn about how you're going to acquit yourself is by getting those reps. So I think he's probably going to be more along the lines of a project, but somebody that I think the fact that he was drafted by the Eagles, I think you feel pretty good about him sticking with the roster this year. But he's also going to have to contribute on special teams because I don't really see, again, barring something unforeseen, him really factoring into the defensive rotation.
Is there a under-the-radar edge rusher that you're going to have your eye on when you get to camp?
Well, Powell-Ryland would be one, but I don't really consider him under the radar because he was a draft pick. I guess if I had to pick one between KJ Henry or O'Shawn Mathis, it would probably be O'Shawn Mathis. He has good length at 6'5", 260 pounds. He's played in 14 NFL games, played in one game for the Eagles last season. I don't know that there is a path to him being able to really unseat any of the players above him. But as far as under-the-radar players go, who does have some experience, that's somebody that I'll be keeping an eye on.
Training camp begins on the 23rd. That'll be the first day the Eagles get out on the field. They report on the 22nd. Football at 4 will be all over it. And the guys from the Inside the Birds podcast have plenty of coverage right now over at InsideTheBirds.com. He's Andrew DiCecco. Have a great holiday, man, and we will talk to you next week.
Thanks, Mike. Happy 4th. Talk to you soon, man.
Same to you. There's Andrew DiCecco, and, of course, the Inside the Birds podcast you can check out on all podcasting platforms.